Alright, what we're going to do today is we're going to detail strip a Gen 4 Glock 23 40 caliber handgun. Basically, I'm going to go through this step by step widget. The only tools you'll need is a Glock tool, which is basically a very small punch, and a small flathead screwdriver, which you only use that for one part. But basically what you want to do before you start working on any gun is you want to make sure it's unloaded, remove the magazine, set it aside, point it in a safe direction, and wrap the slide a couple times to make sure it's clear. If you do that, lock the slide back, check physically and visually to make sure there's nothing in there. The gun is completely unloaded. Once you've done that, you let the slide go forward, and the way you field strip a Glock, which is basically taking it apart for a basic cleaning, is you have to actually fire it. So it has to be in the fired position. So what you do is you squeeze the trigger, grab the gun like this, pull back about 1/8 of an inch or so on the slide. You'll feel it kind of unlock, and you pull on the slide lock. There's on both sides of the gun. You pull this down and then let the slide go forward, and the slide will come right off. Okay, so we're going to set the frame aside. I'm going to go ahead and finish field stripping the slide. And the way you do that is you remove the recoil spring and you remove the barrel. Oops, trying to get away there. Alright, so now it is completely field stripped. That means for a basic clean, but we're going to go even further than that. We're going to do a detail strip. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with the slide. And the way you take apart the slide is stand it on its end. And I don't know if you can see it down in here or not, but right here where the firing pin is, you pull the firing pin back a little bit, you'll hear it click, and there's a little space in there between the end of the firing pin and there's a little plastic, a black plastic sleeve. You want to push down on that sleeve, and what it does is that takes tension off the firing pin spring and the extractor plunger spring back here on the back. So you do that, and you take your other thumb and just start to work that cover off. And once you do, you got to hold your finger over it because there's two springs in there. You hear it kind of click. That's those springs getting turning loose. So we're going to pull the cover off. As you can see, there's the firing pin assembly, and there's the extractor plunger. So we're going to take the firing pin assembly and pull it completely out. We're going to take the extractor plunger and pull it out. See, it's got a spring attached to it and also a little nylon insert in there. That nylon insert's different depending on the particular Glock you have, as with most of the parts. They all look the same, but there are some differences in them. Once you pull those out, you got to remove the extractor here. And if you just take and push in on the firing pin safety, which is this little silver round spot, it should fall right out. Okay. And then of course there's nothing holding the firing pin safety in, which it's got a little spring in it. That spring will come out, but we're not going to take it out for purposes of this. And that slide is now completely detail stripped. There's no parts left in it. Simple as that. Alright, now we're going to finish taking apart the firing pin assembly, and the way you do that is if you take it, and you'll find it's easier if you take it and set it in the end of the slide here and just pull down on it. There's two little half cups here that they're like retainers. Hold that spring on, pull the spring down a little bit, and those cups will come right off. They're really tiny, so you got to be careful not to lose them. Then let the spring back up. Spring comes right off. Then you take a little black plastic sleeve off of there, and there's your firing pin assembly. Okay. All right, so that's the part. Now we're going to go back to the frame. Frame has 3 pins that hold it together. You got 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, they just basically hold the trigger group and all these little parts in there. This pin here, they call that first in, first out. You take it out first and you put it back in first when you're reassembling it. So what you do is you just take your Glock tool or your punch and push it. Oops. Let's see. Push it through. That's a little metal pin. Next one you push out is the trigger one. Now the one that goes through the triggers, if you don't hit this with a hammer, you'll feel it's kind of tight. What you have to do is you have to wiggle the slide catch, and it will release that. So basically just put a little bit of pressure on it with your punch. Now let's see. It's going to be a little more difficult than usual. There it goes. Once you wiggle that a little bit, it's going to slide right through the other side. Don't hit it with a hammer. Okay, it's just getting hung up by this lever right here because there's spring tension on this and it's pushing down into that groove. There's the slide catch. Set it aside. Next thing you want to do is take this is a polymer pin in the back. Okay, this is the only polymer pin. You're going to take it. You're just going to push it through with your punch. It'll come through the other side. Now you can remove the locking block. The locking block here is where your barrel locks onto the frame. So if you take your Glock tool, put it in there, use a little bit of leverage on it, it'll slide right up, just like that, and it'll come out. Alright, now your whole trigger group is loose. So we're going to pull the whole trigger group out, just like that. Set the frame down for a second while we disassemble the trigger group. Now the back part of the trigger group comes apart. You do not remove the trigger. It does not come loose. Okay, that's all part of this assembly. So the way you get this apart, it fits into the part of the trigger bar here, fits into a groove here. You might want to zoom in on this so that you can see it close. Alright, so basically what you do is you have to kind of twist it out, kind of away from it, and you can remove it out of there. Okay, try that one more time just to show you. You twist it out, pull it up, and there's a little tiny spring on there. Now the way this spring, it goes on there a certain way, it kind of goes, if you're looking at it like this, it's like an S. So the top of the S points to the right, the bottom of the S to the left. So we're going to just unhook the trigger bar. Remember, this does not come off here. Then this spring here comes off the back. I don't know if you're zoomed in enough to see that. See how it's kind of an S? This hook goes this way, the bottom hook goes the other. Set that aside. And the last thing you got is the connector. This connector is what determines what the pressure of your trigger pull is. This is a standard 5.5 pound connector. And if you put your Glock tool, there's a little hole in the other side. You can push that connector right out of there. See how it's moving while I'm pushing it through? And then you can just pull it right out. And your trigger housing and your connector are separated. The last couple things in here are your slide lock and then your magazine catch. The way you get the slide lock out, there's a little metal spring in there that puts upward pressure on this thing. That's what actually, whenever you pull down on it, it kind of pushes it back up. All you do is you push down on that and you can slide it out one side or the other, whichever side you choose. You just got to get a hold of it. Oh, there it goes. Now when you take that out, this is something you got to put back in the right way. There's a smooth side and there's a side that has a little groove up here in the top. The groove goes towards the back. Okay, if you don't do that right, you're going to have some issues. Okay, and then you got the spring there, which you don't have to take this out unless you're replacing it, but it's real easy to get out. You just kind of lift up on it with your Glock tool and you can reach down there and pull it right out. It just sits into a little space down there. Last thing you got is your magazine catch. The magazine catch has a little, I don't know if you can see it down here, you probably can't, but it almost looks like a straightened out paper clip, but it's a pretty stout piece of steel that holds this in. And the way you get that out, you get you a tiny flathead screwdriver or a pick or something, and you've got to kind of, this is kind of tricky, so again, you don't want to take this out unless you absolutely have to, but the way you do is you have to push that spring all the way over to one side, and there's a little cutout in the magazine catch. It's going to be hard to show this on video, but you have to kind of pop it out of there. There we go. Got it popped out. So once you pop it out, it'll loosen up that magazine catch, but you're going to have to still pull that out a little bit further to get it out. So you're going to take your screwdriver and stick it in from the side, pry up on that so you can take the tension off of it, and then that'll come out. Now you can remove that little steel spring, but it's not necessary. The way you do it, you just take a pair of needle nose pliers and just pop it straight out of there, put it back in the same way it came out. So there it is. That gun is 100% disassembled. Whenever you get it disassembled, you want to make sure you clean out every little nook and cranny where, dirt, dust, oil, burnt gunpowder, unburnt gunpowder, anything that gets in this gun and gunks it up. That's what you do take it apart for, is to clean it. Glocks are pretty reliable weapons. You don't have to necessarily do this that often unless you're putting a lot of rounds through it. But if it doesn't take long, it's not difficult. It's not like you have to have an armorer do it. I am a Glock armorer, so I'm very familiar with how to do this. But now that we've got it apart, this gun's already been cleaned, so I'm not going to go through all that, but I'm going to show you how to put it back together. So we're going to start kind of in the reverse order. We're going to go ahead and start with the magazine spring, or the magazine catch. We're going to actually take the serrated side, not the curved side, but the serrated side, put it in first. And to get it past that spring, since the spring is still in there, we're going to have to take our screwdriver again and kind of just put a little bit of outward pressure on that spring so that we can get the magazine catch past it. And it's not real difficult. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can get it past there. Okay, I got it in there. Okay, now I've got to take that spring and get it back in there so that it actually holds tension on this. And the way you do that is you just have to hold the magazine catch all the way in from this side of the gun, and you push that metal spring all the way over. And this is not the easiest part, but you push it all the way over, and there's a little groove. I think it slid out a little bit, that's why it's not want to lock in. There it is. Yep, there it is. Slid it back down. Alright, and it's back in. If it slides out on you, just take your punch and push it back down in the groove that it goes in, and now you got spring tension on your magazine catch. Now we're going to go back to the slide lock up here. We're going to put the spring in first. Spring goes in like this with the straight edge going down into a little groove. Once you get that down in there, remember the slide lock, you take the cutout edge goes towards the back of the gun, so it would be facing you if you were actually holding it in a shooting position. Start it in there, whoops, in the right orientation, and you just need to depress this spring down so that the slide lock can go past it. Once it goes past it, it'll lock up into a groove there. Now you have spring tension on your slide lock. Alright, next we are going to assemble our trigger group again. We'll get the trigger housing and the trigger spring. Trigger spring, remember, it's like an S, so the bottom side, the hook goes to the left. Then we're going to take the top side and hook it back into the trigger bar. That's what this is called. And this, alright, I forgot a step, hold on, need my connector. Here it is, at the end of the screwdriver. You got to put your connector in here, and it's not a big deal. I just missed a step there. You just slide it back in where it was, and once you do that, you twist it the same way you did to get it out. You kind of twist it to the side, and you lock it in like that. Okay. Take it, set the whole trigger group into your frame. It should slide down in there and seat pretty good. Shouldn't be any gaps or anything like that. They fit really well. And you can actually then take your locking block, slide it down into place. It should fit good right around the trigger. Okay. Alright. Next we're going to put, remember we set our first in, first out pin. The first pin you take out is also the first one you put in. So we're going to take it, slide it into the small hole behind the locking block. That's what holds the locking block down till it's all the way in. And we're going to take our Glock tool and just push it into where it's even. You'll feel it kind of lock in there. But that's holding that whole assembly down, okay? Next, we're going to take our trigger pin. Same way, we're going to just push, or actually, you know what? Let's do this. We got to put this in before we put the trigger pin in. This is the slide catch. You're just going to slide it in. It goes right up under that first pin, and this pin is going to go through the trigger and this hole here, okay? So we're going to fit that in there, and then that trigger pin is going to slide right in, and you'll hear it kind of click. You'll feel a click whenever it's in place. Work your slide catch, work everything, just make sure it shouldn't be any issue, but just always double check to make sure it's working right. Okay, and the last pin we've got is the polymer pin for the back of the hand grip, and you can just slide it in. Just make sure this is seated good, but it should pretty much slide right through. You may have to wiggle it just a little bit to get it through. And sometimes it helps to go ahead and put that in before you put the trigger pin, but there you go. Then you just push it on through until it's even on both sides. There we go. You push down on this just a little bit, makes it a little easier to get in there, but that's in there good and even on both sides. So frame is reassembled. Easy as that. Okay. Now we're going to put our slide back together. The way we do that, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the firing pin assembly together. We'll get our firing pin sleeve, put it back in there, fit it in the groove, our spring for our firing pin, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take it and set it back on top of the slide in that hole. It's got something to hold it solid. And you got these two cups. Now when you put these two cups on there, these rotating cups, you don't want them lined up with the end of the spring, so you want to offset them about 90 degrees. So you pull your spring down, and let me just turn it around where I can see the end of the spring, and you just, when you install them so that they're not right there, because it'll cause them to kind of cock sideways a little bit. Let the spring back up, make sure that it's even all the way around, and your firing pin assembly is back together. Okay? Alright, so now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and take your extractor, slide it back in there. Whoops. Yeah. Alright. And if you take, hold on, I'm trying to do too many things at once here. There we go. Take your extractor and slide it back in. Take your firing pin safety with the spring. If you push it down in there, you have to pull the extractor out just a little bit. Push it down in there and push your extractor in. It's going to kind of hold that extractor in place. Okay. Then you're going to turn it upside down. You're going to drop both your firing pin assembly down to the hole. Just kind of push on it. You'll see it has spring tension. Your extractor, depressor plunger, spring, and the little nylon insert, it's all one assembly there. You'll push it down in there. And then you're going to take your slide cover and you're going to start it. And what you have to do is you have to push in on the firing pin assembly to get it down flush. Get the cover over it, will hold it in place. Then you've got the other plunger here. Just push it down with your Glock tool until you can get the cover over it, and then you'll hear it kind of snap into place. Okay? Once you do that, pull back on your firing pin a couple times just to make sure it moves freely. Work your firing pin safety. Make sure it moves freely. Pull on your extractor there just to make sure it's moving freely, but it's not falling out. Alright, everything's good. So then you're going to take your barrel, put your barrel back in, take your recoil spring, put it back in, make sure everything's lined up good. Put your rails, you feel it lock in there. Cycle the slide a couple times, dry fire it a couple times just to make sure everything, your trigger reset's working. Okay, make sure you tug on the trigger without depressing the trigger safety just to make sure it does lock in place. Try to pull down on with it actually in battery. Pull down on the slide lock just to make sure it should not come down until after you've actually fired it, okay, and pull back on that slide. But it's not coming down, so that's what we want. Push forward on the slide just to make sure that it's not going to slide off the end. After you've done that, what you want to do is you want to fire it. Now, when you pull the slide back, you should be able to get this thing down and it should come off. So pull it back. That's how it works. Okay. We'll put that back together. And that's how you detail strip a Gen 4 Glock 23.